It's no secret that WWE likes to sign wrestlers from other companies. Why spend time and effort growing your own talent when you can just nick someone else's? Plus, the WWE Performance Center has proven itself fairly useless at times, so, needs must. Most new WWE signees are given enough time to complete their remaining indie dates or wrap up any storylines for other promotions. Sometimes, however, they don't even have time to drop the titles they're holding before they start with Titan. I'm Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestlers who signed with WWE whilst champions elsewhere. Join us! Number 10, Dragon Lee. Before he became a fixture of the LWO, Dragon Lee was tearing it up in promotions the world over. The Masked Man collected championships in Ring of Honor, New Japan, and across his native Mexico, including AAA, prior to putting the pen to paper with WWE. At their Noche de Campeones event in December 2022, Lee and his brother Dralistico defeated FTR to become the new AAA World Tag Team Champions. This was a historic moment as Cash and Dax had held the belts for well over a year. However, things were about to get historic for a very different reason. Minutes after the match ended, Lee took to the microphone and announced in front of God and everyone that he'd signed with WWE. This meant that a WWE wrestler had just beaten an AEW wrestler for a AAA title. AAA immediately vacated the titles with more than a little egg on their face, but at least WWE have used Lee really well since this embarrassing moment. I mean, remember his run with the Speed Championship? Anyone? I didn't think so. Number 9, Stephanie Vaquer. Before she started giving Booker T heart palpitations in NXT, many wrestling fans first became aware of Stephanie Vaquer at Forbidden Door 2024. At the pay-per-view, she challenged AEW's TBS champion Mercedes Moné to a unification match, also for the New Japan Strong Women's Championship. The bout was fantastic, one of the best of the night. The Chilean star looked very comfortable on the big stage with one of the most famous women's wrestlers in the world, and her performance was a major talking point by the end of the night. Surely Steph would soon become all elite. Surely she would set up a rematch with Moné somewhere down the line. Surely Tony Khan wouldn't let somebody who just had a great match on one of his shows slip through his fingers? Well, about that. Less than a fortnight after this banger, it was announced that Vaquer had agreed to join WWE, and while she might have dropped her New Japan title at Forbidden Door, she was still the CMLL Women's World Champion when she signed. CMLL were forced to vacate the belt, making that 2 companies that had been left red-faced by Steph joining the big dub. Number 8, the Honky Tonk Man. Wayne Farris should have simply called himself the Carney for all the underhanded tricks he pulled across his career. He allegedly forced changes across WrestleMania 4 by refusing to drop the IC title to Randy Savage. In WCW, he said he wasn't putting over Johnny B. Bad at Starrcade 94, prompting a last-minute change to that card as well. Honestly, I expected more self-respect from a man who dressed up like Elvis for a living. Hell, even before he joined a major national promotion, Honky was giving his bosses a reason to hate him. Whilst wrestling under the slightly different but still utterly ridiculous name of Honky Tonk Wayne, our hero previously was working for Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling in 1986. He defeated Bad News Allen for the company's United States Championship, but this reign was cut short when Vince McMahon and his checkbook came calling. Honky joined WWE before dropping the belt, forcing Stu to vacate the title. The man booked to become the next champion was Makan Singh, who would later go on to become Bastion Booger. That's not particularly relevant, but I'll take any chance to show you a picture of Bastion Booger. Number 7, Rick Rude. The late, great, ravishing Rick Rude knew a thing or two about jumping ship. Most people know he appeared on both WWE Raw and WCW Nitro on the same night, but he'd also recently wrestled for ECW only a few days before this iconic night, thanks to a talent-sharing agreement between Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon. Before all that, however, Rude was a big name in Jim Crockett Promotions. He joined up with Manny Fernandez to form a team called the Awesome Twosome, which is ironically the least awesome name in wrestling history. The pair defeated the Rock and Roll Express in late 1986 to become NWA Tag Team Champions. This could have been the start of something big for the pair, but Rude had different ideas. When the chiseled heartthrob was poached by WWE, the NWA went into panic mode. They announced that the Rock and Roll had beaten Fernandez and substitute partner Ivan Koloff to reclaim the belts in a match that never actually took place. They then aired an earlier non-title bout featuring Rude, claiming he'd been injured during the fight. Number 6, Shinsuke Nakamura. January 6th, 2016 will forever be a black day in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Due to how contracts work in that promotion, a number of high-profile names all became free agents on that particular date. 4 of them, AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Carl Anderson, and Luke Gallows, collectively decided to try their luck in WWE. Part of the problem was that Styles and Nakamura had just put on a classic at Wrestle Kingdom 10. The King of Strong Style had retained the IWGP Intercontinental Championship in a beautiful, brutal encounter with the Phenomenal One, only to swan off 2 days later while still holding the belt. Nakamura was the Intercontinental Championship in New Japan. He helped to establish the title as the company's second most coveted prize across 5 different reigns. Now, he was gone, and he hadn't even bothered to drop it on his way out. Luckily, New Japan had the foresight to crown Kenny Omega as their next champ. There's no way he'd ever leave them for a better opportunity in America. Number 5, Haku. The final days of WCW were a bit like the fall of Rome, only somehow with more people wearing togas and having pet tigers. Come 2001, with the promotion's future in firm doubt, people were flinging stuff at walls to see what would stick. And that's how this curious incident came about. At Sin, WCW's third-to-last ever pay-per-view, Haku, who was wrestling under the name Meng at the time, competed in a 3-way bout for the company's Hardcore Championship. The Walking Brick Wall defeated both Terry Funk and Crowbar to win the belt, but that was just the beginning. 1 week later, under his old name, Haku showed up in WWE's Royal Rumble. It was a surprise nobody saw coming, and to be honest, nobody could explain. Once it became apparent that Vince had been presented with a chance to sign away one of his competition's incumbent champions, all became clear. Instead of crowning a new champion, WCW decided to scrap the title altogether. This was possibly because they had bigger fish to fry, but also because nobody wanted to dare tell Haku he'd have to give it back. Number 4, Taz. When the Human Suplex Machine first won the ECW World Heavyweight Championship, it was a long time coming. He defeated Shane Douglas for the belt in 1999, ending the franchise's mega reign and finally achieving his spot at the top of the card. Unfortunately, this was the beginning of the end of his time in the land of Extreme. Taz had realized that there was nothing left for him to do after winning the company's top prize, so he shopped around for another option. He ultimately signed with WWE in late '99, meaning he wasn't going to need that title for very much longer. Luckily for Paul Heyman's blood pressure, his champ was still available for the Anarchy Rules pay-per-view. Taz was booked in a 3-way dance alongside Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka, which saw him get pinned within 2 minutes. Some people take this as a sign that Heyman was bitter about Taz leaving. But really, when's Paul Heyman ever done anything as petty and unprofessional as that? Number 3, Chris Benoit. A year prior to Haku skipping town while still a champion, WCW faced a similar issue with much higher stakes. Around the turn of the millennium, Chris Benoit and a group of other talented but underused mid-carders were threatening to leave for pastures new. It didn't help that Kevin Sullivan, with whom Benoit shared an interesting history, shall we say, had just been appointed the new head booker. In an attempt to keep hold of one of their most skilled performers, WCW offered Benoit a deal. If he stuck around, he'd win their World Championship at Sold Out 2000. And that's precisely what happened, as the Crippler defeated Sid Vicious to win the vacant belt and become top dog for the first time ever. How long did his reign last? 1 single day. This peace offering wasn't enough for Benoit, and so he, alongside Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn, left for the World Wrestling Federation. The Radicals, as they would be known, appeared on WWE TV just a few weeks later, whilst WCW refused to acknowledge Benoit's title win for the remainder of its existence. Number 2, CM Punk. When CM Punk scurried through the crowd at Money in the Bank 2011, WWE Championship in hand, the company shouldn't have been that surprised. Prior to joining the big leagues, the straight-edged superstar was a major player in Ring of Honor. At Death Before Dishonor 3, he finally won the big one, defeating Austin Aries for the Ring of Honor Championship in a glorious moment. There was just one small problem, however. Punk had publicly accepted a WWE deal in the build-up to this match. Nobody expected him to win, which made his victory and subsequent heel turn even more shocking. He railed against the company, threatening to take the championship with him to his new home. He even infamously signed his WWE contract on the belt itself, the scoundrel. Fortunately for Ring of Honor and their shareholders, Punk lost the title to James Gibson on his way out the door. This allowed Charles Montgomery to turn face again before his final match in the promotion, which was against his then bestie, Colt Cabana. The so-called Summer of Punk was a thrilling time to be a fan of independent wrestling, and it was much better than WWE's version 6 years later, that's for sure. And number 1, Ric Flair. In terms of champions from one company turning up in another, you don't get much better than the title-stealing, backroom dealing, big gold-wearing, Jim Herd scaring son of a gun. Having done such a good job at running a Pizza Hut, Herd was brought in to oversee WCW in 1988. With his deep knowledge of wrestling and pepperoni, Herd zeroed in on what was clearly the company's biggest problem: current World Heavyweight Champion and WCW icon, Ric Flair. The man in charge saw the Nature Boy and decided he would look better with a shaved head, an earring, and a Roman gladiator gimmick, complete with the new name Spartacus. And because he wasn't a complete blithering idiot, Flair said no and walked away. Unfortunately for WCW, they couldn't get the title off him quick enough. This led to one of the most surreal moments in wrestling history. With Bobby Heenan by his side, Flair debuted on WWE TV still flaunting the big gold belt. He claimed that he still owned the physical title, as the deposit he put down when he became champion, plus the interest, had never been repaid to him. Flair would go on to win the WWE Championship at the '92 Royal Rumble. That same month, Herd stepped down as head of WCW. Probably for the best, Pizza Boy.